Yeah.
And I think if and when we do that, then we can go back to what we were. But that doesn't stop us from going through the pain. We're going to have to go through the Minsky moment. That's coming one way or the other. That's written in. That's baked into the pie because of the system we're in. So it's go through the pain and then rebuild, I think, is what has to happen. And that's why I like to have this channel, is to help people, bring people into reality and into truth so that they understand that, so that we can be the ones that rebuild, because the crash is coming. I mean, that's there. I don't think, that's going away. Hey everybody, this is Rob Keen, so 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙀𝙍.com. It is May 20th, 2022. We're almost through May. We're officially into summer. We have near triple-digit temperatures here in Texas, so you know it's summer. And I'm joined by returning guest Ian Everard, who owns Ark Silver, to talk about what's going on in the world. Ian, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, and all the better for seeing you, Rob.
So how's the weather up where you are, Ian? I mean, we're hitting triple digits probably a month early. What are you guys?
We're freezing, but we seesaw like a 50-degree range from 80 degrees to sub-zero.
Sub-zero. We'll double your temperature then. yeah, pretty well. Yeah. Well, you can send some of that down here. We could use the occasional, the occasional cold front here in Texas. It's going to be a boiler here in Texas, and we have our set of topics we want to talk about. And just off the top of my head, though, I wanted to make a quick comment. When we're dealing with supply chain shortages, one of those energy, we've seen that here in Texas rear its ugly head during the cold season. ERCOT and other analysts in Texas are saying we're going to use more electricity this summer than during any point in time in Texas history, including the winters.
Oh, why?
So we're going to put the grid back under pressure again. And that's the danger of having like a just-in-time system in the supply chain and not building out for future growth. And we're starting to see that in Texas. Of course, a lot of it has to do with people coming to Texas, and we'll talk about that during the presentation today too. But let's turn our attention first to what's going on in Sri Lanka. This is something you brought up to me. They've defaulted on their debt for the first time in history. And I'm looking at an article from the BBC. It says they're having their worst financial crisis in more than 70 years. They had a 30-day grace period to come up with $78 million for unpaid debt interest payments, and that expired Wednesday. So they're basically in default, and their president saying they're in preemptive default. They're technically in default now. So what's going on in Sri Lanka, I think, is a microcosm of what's going on in the rest of the world. Maybe the economies are starting to fray. The world economy is starting to fray at the edges. Ian, do you think it's possible that could come over here to the U.S. or maybe hit Europe?
It's possible enough that we need to try and stop it. Whether the danger is real enough that even if it doesn't go that far, there's enough hungry people in our nation already. There's enough children. You see the signs on the freeway sometimes, 7 million hungry American children. And so we have core issues long-standing, and if you add to that any further pressure, and a bit like you're talking about the Texas electricity supply, it's fine when it's fine, but just have another 2, 3, 4% demand, and then something goes wrong with one substation or one power plant, then it's a chain reaction. And we were sort of talking about chain reactions as well, weren't we, with the cryptos. So there's similar patterns of behavior in all the circumstances that we're facing. So yeah, could it happen here? I think this nation has enough resources, but it needn't, for sure.
So we often get accused of being doom and gloom here on the channel, and people do that because we talk about gold, silver, and gold, silver are often investments of last resort, actually money, when the derivative system collapses. And we've been in this derivative system since 1913, about 100 years. But for the majority of our history as a nation and across the world, we didn't. We had some tie to gold, or we had some honest money, or we had something that kind of governed how bad the governments could drive it. And we're not really doom and gloom. We're really just realists. We look at the signs of what's going on, And we know that what's happening this time is different than what's happened in the past. This time is different. And I've given that lecture at conferences many times. And it's interesting you brought up the cryptos. Last night we had on Kurt Wuckert, who's a Bitcoin historian for CoinGeek, travels around the world, helping countries and companies learn to live in the crypto ecosystem. And it was interesting, his thoughts. We were talking about Tether and Luna and the danger that the stablecoin universe has to the rest of the crypto complex. And I don't know if a lot of people know this who may not follow crypto as closely, but there is a lot of cross-pollination among the crypto complex. It's kind of like the global banking system. In fact, it's a lot like the global banking system. And it looks like Luna has completely crashed out. Tether's coming under tremendous pressure because of all the redemptions. We're talking huge redemptions by people holding millions of dollars worth of this stuff and tens of millions of dollars. And they're being liquidated. We know that it's questionable whether they actually had, we know that they didn't have dollar for dollar the amount of tethers they issued, but they were dealing in commercial paper and other things. And are they even one-to-one backed by any asset, whether it be commercial paper, or was this stuff just printed out of thin air, much like fiat currency? So this is a long-winded way of me saying in all the derivatives, including the cryptocurrency complex, I see pressure building.
Yeah.
And it's for the same reason. It's because when you deal in any sort of derivative and you don't come back to real physical money or real physical value, that's when you start to get in trouble. What are your thoughts on Tether, Luna, and what's going on in the cryptos?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the bigger principle is the counterparty risk. And I remember a while back, 𝙈𝙁𝙇𝙀𝙍 just did an excellent, I think it was 5 or 6 minute video. And he just explained that the dollar is a gold substitute and crypto is a dollar substitute. And when gold separates from the dollar, when you can no longer buy gold, or it's at a much greater dollar nominated value, that breaks down the actual, any remaining value in our fiat currency. And cryptos are tethered, whether they like it or not, connected to dollars, because people redeem them for dollars to purchase goods and services.
Right.
So on the bigger picture, it's a counterparty risk, and Tether won't reveal, as far as I've seen, what their commercial paper is. So it can't be marked to market. Now, if the market is Chinese real estate developers, we could say on aggregate that value has dropped 50%. So now, they have not got a $1 valuation. And again, I think, you correct me here, Rob, I think Tether provides about a 200 billion buffer to the value of Bitcoin. It's just a liquidity. So it's a bit like your torque converter in a car between the engine and the transmission. Just smooths out the connection. Now, if that dries up, we could see some real wild moves in the value of Bitcoin, both up and down, but generally on a downward trend. And I think it's around 30,000 at the moment. But we were promised by certain individuals, and most of us know who they are, I won't name them, but we were promised pretty well, it's going to $500,000. I made a bet with someone I met at your conference, Rob. I bet him 100 ounces of silver. He said Bitcoin was going to $500,000. I think I could be able to collect on that if I can track him down. I think he's in Puerto Rico. So, yeah, I think
a lot of them are in Puerto Rico. Yeah,
yeah.
It's become a haven for a lot of the crypto guys, which good for them, by the way. It's not. I don't mean that in a negative way. I met a lot of them when I was down there.
Yeah,
and was fortunate to be on Rob's channel, Digital Asset News, and appreciate those guys because I think they want the same thing that we do.
They do.
We just have different ways of looking at it, really.
Yeah, to escape the tyranny of an enforced monetary system, currency system.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think we're going to see a whole lot more volatility in Tether. And who's going to come in and bail them out? It's a bit different with a dollar.
Yeah.
We've got the largest army in the world will come in and bail the dollar out in different ways. We've got still, for some reason, the dollar has credible value around the world, and it's still desired in a lot of nations as a more stable currency than their incredibly unstable currencies. Yeah.
So I want to show real quick the chart I put out on Twitter. It was either yesterday or the day before, about Bitcoin and the stock market. So we know that we've had this liquidation in the stock markets. We're in official correction territory now, because I think last time I graphed the NASDAQ a few days ago, it was down 34% year to date. So January 1 to now. So I did a year to date comparison of Bitcoin, which is here at the bottom, versus the other major indices, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ. And Bitcoin's kind of, well, it's not kind of, it's liquidating harder. It's at the bottom when compared with stock indices. So my question was, it's liquidating harder than major U.S. stock markets. Traders are liquidating. What does this tell us about the market's dominant crypto? Is it really currency or money? Is it value? And when we get into I would even call it a semi-crisis, not even really a big crisis. It's just a large correction in the stock market. Why is Bitcoin selling off harder than the stocks are? The stocks are the ultimate derivative, and we can go into detail on that. But why is Bitcoin selling off harder than the stock market? If there's fear in the stock market, why wouldn't people be going to Bitcoin if it were truly a store of value and a monetary last resort, much like gold has been through the last several thousand years?
Because it isn't a store of value, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for various reasons. One, was it 10 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Two, unfortunately, I think it's prospered because people pump it. And the whole, you get a surge of enthusiasm, and, I've got friends who bought at 2,000. Everybody knows somebody who's bought maybe even $100. And then it's human nature to want to make easy, fast gains. And some people have become millionaires, billionaires on it. But I would say at the cost of for every guy that wins, there's 100 little guys who've lost a little bit or a lot. So it's not a store of value.
So I've had the opportunity to hang out with a bunch of crypto guys. Of course, we had Kurt on the program. I've hung out from Rob Digital News, and a couple of trips. I went to Miami in a special event that was at the time that they were holding the Bitcoin conference in Miami. I didn't go to the Bitcoin conference, but I went to some of the side events and talked with a lot of people. And I also recently went to Puerto Rico. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of people down there that are involved in crypto. And I met some guys who own businesses who have made millions of dollars and live a really luxurious lifestyle, have yachts and things like that. So definitely, like you said, there has been money made in crypto. What bothers me about it is there are all sorts of issues in implementation, and people want to know what issues I have. Look at that video that I did with Kurt Wuckert, and we talk explicitly about it. That being said, if we go into a very deep recession, Ian, I'm not negative towards Bitcoin. That I think it could pop back up to 80. I think there's another big melt up coming in Bitcoin, like there is in the rest of paper derivative complex, like commodities, stocks, all that derivative paper that trades. Even the bonds, I would call it derivative because it's debt. It's not a real asset, right? It's a paper trick. It's a paper accounting trick. So I call bonds a derivative. All those derivative paper assets are going to get bid up again, I think, in sort of a melt up scenario. And so I think people are going to be sucked back in. What happens if people get sucked back in and then that crashes again and it washes more people out of their wealth?
Yeah.
What does that do to the economy overall? Because we know we're stackers. We believe in gold and silver. The majority of people don't. What does that do to the majority of people?
Well, they become even more dependent on the state, and they become even more tolerant of ever more draconian rules and regulations.
Mm-hmm.
We already have, I think it's nearly 50 million people on the SNAP program.
Mm-hmm.
We've mentioned that before. And just sort of circling back to you saying about we could enter recession, we've been in recession since 2008, Rob, because recession, all it is successive periods of below what the economy should be doing. Mm-hmm. And when you look at all of the fake GDP on borrowed money, i.e. the increase in the federal debt, that's fake GDP. So we've been way below what this nation should have been doing. And so we've been in recession, You can still have growth and be in recession, but it's growth below what it should be for successive periods. It's just going to get worse.
So I'm looking at an article at CNBC right now, and the title is, "The U.S. economy is nowhere near a recession this year," says an economist. But 2023 is a different story. And the economist says, hey, we've had good job creation, not looking at the labor force participation rate, which is down overall, but we're talking about the U6 job number, and saying we've had the consumer spend more this year, which they have, but the article neglects to mention they did it on credit. So it's not like they were spending money they had, because they don't have money. And this economy is saying 2023 could be a difference where we actually have a pullback in GDP. We are pulled back in GDP. I think 1.4% is the number quoted in the article. Everybody do your own research on that. I didn't research it. But anyway, falling GDP, falling labor force participation rate. Major economists are coming on the financial news saying it's not an issue, it's not an issue. They're not really explaining the truth. The truth is negative GDP growth, consumer spending on credit cards, which is bad because it increases debt, and it puts them in a disadvantageous position if they lose their job or lose income, or inflation erodes their income. Labor force participation rate is 3 points below where it was prior to the last financial crisis. So we never made up ground from 2008, 2009 in terms of people with overall amount of people with jobs. More people are being added to government goals. So it's clear the economists that are in the mainstream media are not going to call a recession until they have to. Do you believe we're in a recession right now?
Absolutely. I stand by what I just said. We've been in recession since 2008. If you strip out all of the fake, and the majority of government spending doesn't actually produce dollars. It just actually produces the need to create more dollars, because the government programs never seem to go away. They add another one and they add another one, and it just gets layered up. And not only that, you have all the bureaucracy to administer it out. So yes, I guess it does create jobs, but jobs to distribute fake currency.
Yeah.
This nation should be prospering. And the only conclusion I come to is it's not, because the theft of the effort of the people who are working, that they're not getting remunerated in real purchasing power. That's been dropping since 1971. I mean, Mike Maloney did an excellent video called WTF 1971. It's well worth looking at, all of the charts, and you look at, well, productivity has not stopped increasing right the way through that period. But remuneration has flat lines since 1971, and that's why we need two good wage earners to live in most of the major cities now in America. And that's a practical change. And now people are struggling to purchase their food each week. That shouldn't be happening. If this nation was prospering and everything's fine and GDP's good, why have we got 30 trillion rising of debt that we're told about? Goodness knows what other lies are hiding in the Federal Reserve, which isn't federal and has no reserves. All these foreign, was it the 14 nations? We have the FX swap lines, where they just create dollars and then buy those nations' currencies. We don't even know what those records are. And Jerome Powell has a brass neck to when he's questioned by Congress, just basically say, I don't have to tell you that.
Well, he doesn't, because the Federal Reserve is owned by the private banks. Back in the day when it was created, it was like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. And we don't know who owns the stock now because it's private information, but we know they're owned by the big commercial banks who ultimately benefit from it, because every dollar brought into existence has interest on it. And guess who gets the interest? It's the owner of the Federal Reserve. So it's the monetary system is a racket that the commercial banks got put into place. And that's why they like it. It's a moneymaker for them. So they're not going to tell you when either that system's going to crash or that it has leaks, in the dam. Just like that economist I quoted from CNBC on that article that I saw today, they don't want to tell you because they have an interest in the system. And central bankers, I think, really understand how the system works. But I do think that there has been a religion, if you will, of Keynesianism, and now we call this modern monetary theory, same thing. Yeah. That they believe and espouse every day. And to defend people today, not to defend the central bankers, but people today believe that because it's been taught so long that people think that's how the world works. So, for example, you were telling me a central banker couldn't explain why we're having inflation.
Yeah.
So tell us that story.
Well, good old 𝙈𝙂𝙇𝙑𝙬. I think his salary is equivalent to $650,000. Supposedly a highly educated. He seems a reasonable guy. He's just come out and said there's 80% of the reasons of the rise in costs of goods and services he has no control over. But I would say, well, his actions have caused his monetary inflation, which is inflation. And if he doesn't know that, well, then he's incompetent, and I would say criminally incompetent. And if he does know that, he's criminally liable. So either way, it would seem an untenable position that he is in, just to hold his hands up and say there's nothing I can do. It's like an arsonist lighting a fire and standing back and watching. So nothing to do with me, you know. And we've had this around the world, haven't we? The UK, Europe, Japan, America, even China.
Yeah. You can't ignore it anymore, you know, Ian, because it was Argentina.
Yeah.
You know, it was Saudi Arabia, and now it's everywhere. It's you know, it's starting to infect bigger economies. And when you see more and more every day saying, we can't make ends meet, come bail us out, we don't have food, we can't pay our debt. You know, eventually people have to wake up and say, okay, this is a worldwide issue. It's people have to get out of the mindset of the old mercantilist system where every country, we're all independent, we all trade independently and nothing's connected. We're all connected. And simply what we're seeing is the early stages of what I've called the debt collapse. There's going to be a debt collapse, and it'll take the currencies with it. Because why? Because in a purely fiat system, money's created through debt. They're opposite sides of the same coin, but the debt gets created faster, and pretty soon you don't have enough money. Then they have to bring out the helicopters. That's where you have hyperinflation, the dissolution of the system. And we're seeing the early stages of that. And it's frustrating to see people lose faith in the precious metals at a time when that is occurring, because there are a lot of people on Twitter right now frustrated because a derivative, quote unquote, spot price of gold and silver aren't going up. Actually, they are. I showed this week where they're in line with past cycles, but people get frustrated they're not going straight up. And I think all you have to do is just look at what's going on in the rest of the world. Stop paying attention to the price of gold and silver, because it's a speculative derivative price. It has nothing to do with physical trade. It has nothing to do with actual demand, which is sky high in both metals. Yeah. You know, it's speculative gambling, and people focus on that so much that they take their eye off of what the fundamentals are. And we've seen throughout history, when the fundamentals break down like this, we know what's coming, Ian. I mean, we know what's on the horizon, don't we?
Yeah. Well, I believe we do. I mean, you wrote your book, what, 10 years ago? You saw it coming. And then just because you see it ahead of time doesn't mean it's not going to happen. And I think agree. A lot of people will say, well, you're crying wolf, but we know how that story ended. The wolf came. It's like it. And if you look, we just touched on Sri Lanka, didn't we, briefly? You know, their stock market's doing fine in their currency. That's soaring away. But the purchasing power of it is collapsing, and their currency against gold is collapsing. So the precious metals, just look at these countries that are collapsing. And you look at Turkey, gold reveals the debasement of currencies. Gold and silver. It always has done. It always will do. It might take a little bit longer than we would like, but it will happen.
Yeah, I agree with you. We were also talking about Elon Musk. He seems to be making the headlines lately. Of course, he's buying Twitter, but he's also calling out one of the political parties here in the U.S. for being extremists. And he's been quite vocal about some things, and I think surprised some people with some of his views. He's not one of these tech giants that goes along with the script that a lot of the tech companies gone along with. He's different. What is your view on Elon? Yeah,
I mean, well, I won't say what my view used to be because it's changed. I think I have quite a respect for him now. I mean, he appears to have some crazy ideas, but he is a visionary, no doubt, incredibly smart. finally, we have somebody with huge prominence who's calling out what inflation is. And it's the debasement of currencies, the abnormal increase in the currency supply. And good old Mario Monaco 64 is every day pretty well. He talks about, let's call inflation what it actually is. It's the abnormal increase in the money supply. You create too many currency units, their purchasing power will fall.
Yep.
Just sure as gravity. It works just as effectively as gravity. It might take a little bit longer, a bit like on the 𝙂𝙊𝙇𝙑𝘖𝙍 cartoons. Sometimes he pauses midair before he falls to his doom, but he always falls to his doom, and usually with a big anvil on top of him. So it's going to happen. The purchasing power is accelerating. The loss of purchasing power is accelerating, even in the dollar. And yeah, we have the dollar milkshake theory, and I think Brent Johnson is partially correct in that. But it's still falling in its purchasing power here.
Well, Brent Johnson, what I understand the dollar milkshake, and I'm not going to completely accurately describe this, but I believe from speaking with him and following him on Twitter and understanding the basic precept is the dollar will be the best last currency standing, which I don't disagree with. It's the world reserve currency. But it ain't going to last forever. It's going to come down. And I think people have a hard time living the last 50 years and understanding that because our whole world has been this. But throughout history, every reserve currency, every dominant currency, whatever you want to call them, whether they were formally dubbed as such or they just happened to be and used in trade, have all fallen when they've gone fiat. And it's not anything new, but getting people to understand that at a point in time in 2022 is very difficult if they weren't there in the 1600s, the 1700s, 1900s, right? They weren't there for the last one. They weren't there when the pound broke apart and the British Empire started to disseminate, right? When they lost control, that was a currency event, a currency debt and trade event. That's going to happen to the U.S., but how do you tell people who have grown up in the U.S. the whole time and their entire frame of context is just the system that we're living in?
Yeah.
I know you run across those every day, Ian. What's your advice for people that
first
this is all they know?
First, it's understanding what recency bias is. So we extrapolate into the future, just for our mental stability. To presume things could be drastically different to tomorrow from yesterday is too traumatic for most people. But they can. Yeah. And it can happen nationwide, not just individually. And then you extrapolate, like you said, a lifetime, how America has prospered after the Second World War. It was the last nation standing. It was the only nation that didn't have destroyed industry, a destroyed male population. If you had a pulse, you were going to succeed in the 50s and 60s. But that is fading away. It's incredibly hard for an American to get into the middle class now, where you're financially dependent. You can choose, you can build a business, you can prosper, you can take 6 months off to go do a tour somewhere. It's incredibly hard now for an American to do that. And it's almost a slow strangulation of the American dream. That, from what I understand, Americans were taught from birth. And it's an incredible nation. I mean, I decided to move here. It's an incredible nation, and there's still incredible opportunities, but it's harder and harder and harder if you haven't got connections. So, oh my gosh, where did we start, Rob? I sort of drifted off. Pull me back.
We could go forever on this because, I think what we're doing is we're waxing poetic on the end of the U.S. empire, which is a very serious thing. Yeah. I mean, what do you say about it, Ian? I don't know.
It doesn't need to end badly. That's what I want to say. I think we have incredible opportunities here. We have incredible resources. We have beautiful people. We have diverse races and nationalities. And we in most communities there is still cohesion, I think. And I think it's within reach for the communities where there isn't. If we will just stop and talk to our neighbours and just step out of our comfort zone, And maybe appreciate other cultures and some of the incredibly hardworking immigrant communities, legal and illegal. I say if somebody is working their butt off in America, and they got their head down and they're working hard and they're providing for their family and they're sending money home, what does that say about their character and their integrity and their desire? All they want is a roof over their head and food. That, and people come to this nation in the hope of getting that. Am I saying we should have open borders? Absolutely not. No. We should know who's coming in and who's going out. Absolutely. But I think we should be a whole lot more welcoming to people who want to work hard and do work hard. And with the space we've got, with the farmland we've got, with the resources, I mean, we are still the only nation on earth that we could actually provide everything we need in abundance and without lack. So that's my hope, that enough people wake up to say to our government, you've got to just rethink this. We've got to make sure, first, everybody's fed, and two, everybody has heat, everybody has water, because there's plenty. There is plenty. And I'm not talking about some daft redistribution. But when you start on a community level, whether like a bit like Václav Havel did in Czechoslovakia, a parallel society, you build that. You get to know your neighbours. That's where your safety is going to be in community. Safety physically, safety from crime, safety in food security, safety if your car breaks down and you can't afford the $1,000 a shop wants to fix it. There's going to be a mechanic in your community that if you offer to do something for him, he'll probably help you fix your car. And this is what we need to do, is get back to what I perceive 50s America was. And it's hard. It's harder in a big urban center where people are shut away. You have, everybody has their own front door, and when they leave their front door, they go to work, and when they go home, they shut their front door. And I think we need to just try and encourage people just to take some time and think how they can improve. Because at the end of the day, that's the quality of life. It's who your friends are, and the number of people that if you're in a bad situation, you can call up and they will be there. Because the last thing we really want is to call the government for help and them turn up and help us, isn't it? I mean, is that famous? Was it Reagan who said? The last
thing you want to see is the government showing up saying, we're here to help, right?
Yeah. Because they mess it up, even if they've got good intentions. And we end up with...
I think a lot of people in government do have good intentions.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm glad you brought this subject up, because, if you go back to the forming of the Union, to claim residency, there was not a citizenship. It wasn't like, oh, you're here, you have a driver's license, you have a birth certificate, you're a citizen versus people that weren't. We were a nation of migrants.
Yeah.
And people would come and go across borders. And again, as long as they were being productive in things, they could share in the benefits. But the benefits were individually gotten or community gotten. They weren't government gotten. And what has changed and why we have this big border dispute right now is because we give away so much stuff that it's become a dispute over how are you cutting up the pie of my taxes, which are my labor. So in other words, when people are arguing about the border dispute, they're saying you're stealing my labor because you're taking money from me in taxes as a result of my labor and giving it to someone else. And I think that's the big debate. But if we go back to the way it was before, we didn't have a strong central government, and we didn't have all these give outs. Communities took care of each other, and they were wonderfully diverse. I mean, I grew up here in Texas where, my ex-wife was Asian, and I was with her for 29 years, and we have mixed children, and they're beautiful. And, we have a lot of our laws are based on Hispanic culture. All of the land grants for the land that I own, I think I've said this on the program before, were Spanish. So I actually have the original Spanish land grants for all the parcels that I own here in Texas, and I can trace back ownership of my properties to those land grants. So we've had a wonderful mix of cultures, and we don't want to forget that and get rid of it. But I think, Ian, it's up to we the people. It's up to we the people to take that back and say it's all about community. And all of this shit going on with the government stirring the pot, the two political parties stirring the pot, they're the enemy to me right now in terms of harmony, of the people in society. That's what I mean, because they're the ones that stir up the crap. And if they just got out of the way and stop creating debt slaves and stop implementing this monetary system and just let us be like we used to be, people would naturally get along and people would naturally form communities and we wouldn't have all this division. All this division is tied back to a central government which steals from one person to give to another, and then the parties go out there and inflame things, but by pitting Group A against Group B, and it's all kabuki theater. We don't have to pay attention to any of this garbage. We can go back to the way it was before. As long as you're here and you're working hard and you're part of the community, that's what matters. We don't care where you're from. That's the way it used to be. And all this division and hate and arguing is driven by two things. It's the monetary system and it's the idiot politicians. And really, we need to flush out both of those. We need to go back to honest money, and we need to put limits on the politicians in terms of their power, the terms that they can serve, and we need to take control back. And the good news is we, the people, can do that. We just have to want to do it. And I haven't seen that, although I see it starting to come out. Going back to the Bitcoin argument, more Bitcoin people, more crypto people are along the lines of what the gold people are, is we just want honest money. We have different ways of getting there, but we have the same belief system. So all of us need to come together, stop arguing with each other, and start uniting and saying, this is what we want. And I think if and when we do that, then we can go back to what we were. But that doesn't stop us from going through the pain. We're going to have to go through the Minsky moment. That's coming one way or the other. That's written in. That's baked into the pie because of the system we're in. So it's go through the pain and then rebuild, I think, is what has to happen. And that's why I like to have this channel, is to help people, bring people into reality and into truth so that they understand that, so that we can be the ones that rebuild, because the crash is coming. I mean, that's there. I don't think, that's going away. It's what we do after that matters to me. And how we do it and how we treat each other. We need to stop attacking each other and go after the people that caused the issue, I think is my opinion.
I mean, whether we're going after, I mean, I love Ron Paul's words last time I heard him speak, and his catchphrase was "end the Fed," but he's changed it to make the Fed irrelevant. So how do we make the Fed irrelevant?
Be like George Carlin, just make fun of them, make them irrelevant. Laugh them out of power. What the comedians have figured out, that the best way to take away someone's power is to laugh at them and point the finger and say, you're full of crap. Laugh at them, take away their referential power. And if, all the central bankers only have the power we give to them. If we simply say, we're not giving you power anymore, they go away.
We hope they do. Maybe Elon can build us a rocket and send them to Mars. That would be the trial Mars community. All the central bankers and all the corrupt politicians and all the incompetent politicians, and so we can put Jerome on there, we can put Andrew Bailey on there, and just they can form a community on Mars.
Get rid of all the idiot academics who don't understand where inflation comes from. Because they have so many formulas in their mind they can't see the forest for the trees, right?
Well, it's smoke and mirrors and a whole lot of lies. Have you seen the calculations they use? The Fed have these long equations to make it look like they know what they're doing, and it's a whole load of it's a whole load of mathematical nonsense. I've seen mathematicians just strip it apart. It's just nonsense. So again, I repeat: either they know what they've done and they know the consequences, and then that's criminal, and they're criminally liable. Or if they don't, they're criminally incompetent. They're criminally negligent.
I think there's two camps. I think the criminally incompetent make up the majority because this is a system they were brought up in. But I do think there are some smart people there. I think Powell's one of them that knows, and now he's part of it, because Powell came in wanting to be honest and change the system, but now he's in the system. The system has taken him over. It's like a virus that invades your body,
It's worse, Rob. It's like the Borg on Star Trek. It's worse. You become part human, part machine. If you've ever watched,
he has become one of the Borg, or the invasion of the body snatchers. They've taken over his body, even though he had good intent, right?
Maybe
he had good intent.
Although he is a lawyer, so excuse us for any lawyers watching. I mean, they still twist words around to mean what they want to mean, don't they?
So we're going to wrap this one up. We're going to talk about your service, and people are saying premiums are high, premiums are high, premiums are high. And we've given the solution, have been giving the solution now for about 6 months.
Yeah.
The high premiums, and that is Ark Silver. So I want to share that with people. I'm going to share a screen here on our website. If you want to order metals from Ark Silver, who has cheap prices on metal that they're able to get, from 1,000-ounce bars to 40% candy house to whatever Ian can get, you'll find some of the cheapest deals here. If you go to our website and click on precious metals deals, you can click on access deals here to access the form. It pops up a new page, and you put in your contact information. You want your name, email, phone number, and what you're interested in. Ian will reach out to you. Now make sure that you whitelist and put in your address book this email address. It's invest@arksilver.com. That's invest@arksilver.com. That way, when he responds to you, it doesn't go to your spam folder. Also, he may text you as well. If he doesn't hear from you by email, he may assume that it's gone to the spam folder. He may text you from that number. And so make sure that you have a good phone number in there to speak with him about. Ian, what are some of the deals that you have going on right now for Ark Silver?
We're still doing the Kennedy halves.
Okay.
129 over spot for the silver content.
That's $1.29 over the silver content spot, and you get the base metals for free. You will not find that deal on any of the large dealers anywhere.
So that's the same price. Currently, I can do the 1,000-ounce bars at 129. We're showing 145 on the website because it has spiked to that on occasions. It does vary day to day on what wholesalers have got available. But so yes, those Kennedy halves are the same price per ounce of silver as the 1,000-ounce bars. And then we've got the raw nickels, which we are going to need because these will be our change.
Okay.
When silver's purchasing power gets to where it's going, you'll need change. You'll need change for your 1 ounce buffalo round.
Yep.
So 18 of these equals one of these silver contents. And now you've got fractional spending money, because otherwise it's going to get hard. When this will buy, I don't know, a week's food or a sack of potatoes. Well, what if you don't want a whole sack of potatoes? You're going to need one of these, so you're going to need change. So I think it's good for any stacker to have some fractional, again, without the high premium, because the bullion industry, the fractional has like a 40%, a 50% premium on it, which I think is extortion. And the beauty of the old American constitutional coins is they're pretty well impossible to forge, just because of the how they're constructed and how they're made and the aging on them. And then we've still got the kilo bars starting from $3 premium. So they're mainly Swiss, sometimes Turkish. And we've got some 10-ounce bars in stock. These are American, little stumpy little 10-ounce bars. We've got some Nadir 4.9 silver 10-ounce bars. We have some Asahi 10-ounce bars coming in. We have the full range of silverback precious metals, my favorite still. And we have slices. We have 10-ounce rounds. And we have gold buffaloes for people who want to step it up a bit into gold. And the gold Britannias, which are an incredible premium, just a few dollars more than a 1 ounce gold bar at the moment. And we have the silver Britannias, one of the most beautiful coins. That's the least expensive government minted coin. And pretty well everything else you want. If you want platinum, if you want kilo gold, we're around the $22, $23 premium for kilo gold, which from my research is the best price anywhere. So
$22 to $23
per ounce premium, right?
That's awesome. With gold trading, what, 1,800 something? That's a very small percentage.
Yeah. It's not. I don't think the premiums are going to fall back. I'm not seeing anything fall back yet. And they've been rising steadily for over 6 months. Well, from October last year, September last year, they started rising. I haven't seen any sign that premiums are dropping, just a steady increase. And I think we're going to get a surge in premiums again is coming. And a lot of retailers actually haven't dropped. If you look at the big names, you look at their price per coin, that their premiums are increasing.
Ian, that's what I wanted to ask you. How do you keep your premiums lower than the big guys? I suspect I know the answer, but I wanted to get your view on that.
I'm building the company. I want to get as much silver in the hands of we the people as possible, and I don't need to make a high margin. In fact, if I can do it at cost, i.e. my total costs, so I break even for a while, that's fine because I'm building the company. I prefer to do that than pay for advertising. Just for clarity, any sale that comes through Gold Silver Pros, Rob gets a cut of that as a thank you for the time and effort and the help he's put in. And so if you do purchase through Gold Silver Pros, that helps Rob out and it helps him provide even more of his amazing content. Rob, I can say, is widely respected worldwide. I talk to people in the UK, in Ireland, in Canada, and yeah, we need to take notice of what Rob's saying.
Thank you, Ian. I appreciate that. So I think the answer to my question is because you're trying to build your market share and because you're willing to deal on lower margins and doing this yourself, you're able to get it.
Yeah.
You would not be able to do that at Amex precisely because they're running a big business. They do advertising. They do have more cost. So your advantage is that you're on a lower cost basis than they are.
Yeah.
So to answer to people, because you can get it through Ark Silver, doesn't mean the entire industry can do what Ian's doing. Ian has a unique value proposition and a unique aspect that he brings to his business. He's able to do this cheaper than other guys. He's making some personal sacrifice to do so with his time and with the money he's leaving on the table that he could make by charging these rates. And so I don't know how long this will go, but I know if you're interested in precious metals, Ian's a good place to get it while he's doing this because he certainly could charge a lot more for what he's doing. So we appreciate, Ian, you doing that for our customers. It's a really big deal. You're saving people a ton of money when they buy the precious metals. And to do so, you're taking a personal sacrifice to do it because that's money that could be yours. Yeah, so I really do appreciate you doing that, for our viewers.
And the upside is I gradually increase my stack at wholesale. So there is an upside, and I know. But is this financial advice? No. Is this fact? No. But I know personally the purchasing power is going to go 10 times minimum of where we're at.
Right.
So, okay, I'm working hard now, but it helps me build my stack just a little bit at a time, 1% here, 2% there. If my margin is 1%, I take it in silver. And I know that's going to go tenfold. So therefore, my margin will be 10%, but it only costs the client 1% now. I know in the future I will get the payback. So well,
Ian, God bless you for doing what you're doing. We're going to go ahead and wrap this one up. We've got about 45 minutes. It's been a good one. We'll have you back on. Ian comes on the program from time to time. Remember, if you need to contact him, go to 𝙂𝙊𝙇.com. He's got his phone number there. He's got an email contact form there. Or you can go to goldsilverpros.com and fill out that contact form I showed you and simply make an inquiry. He or one of his employees will reach out to you and they'll work with you. And I haven't had a single complaint. I've had people universally come to me and say they like working with Ian. So that's the ultimate endorsement is when people from my network say, yeah, he's the real deal. He's a good guy. I can't say anything more than that. So thank you, Ian, for joining the program. We'll have you back on.
Thank you, Rob.